chain, we adore thee, whom all men love, spotless, taking man's form. O purifier, thou art above the gunas three, knowledge divine, not flesh, thou whom the cosmos wears, a diamond at its heart. Let us look deep in thine eyes, they are bright with the wisdom of God, that can wake us from Maya's spell. Let us hold fast to thy feet, treading the waves of the world to safety. O drunk with love, God drunken lover, in thee all paths of all yogas meet. Lord of the worlds, thou art ours, who wert born a child of our time, easy of access to us. O merciful, if we take any hold upon God in our prayer, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. O Master of all who renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt, standing firm in the vision of God, refuge to all who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Without question thou shelterest us, and the world's great sea in its wrath seems shrunk to the puddle that fills the hoof-print in the clay. Speech cannot hold thee, nor mind, yet without thee we think not, nor speak. Love, who art partial to none, we are equal before thy sight. Taker away of our pain, we salute thee, though we are blind. Come to the heart's black cave, and illumine, thou light of the light.
Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma swarupini avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Good evening, everyone. Today is a very special day. We're celebrating Swami Akhandananda ji Maharaj's birthday. He was one of the great monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, eventually became a president of the Ramakrishna order, and he led a very adventurous life, especially during his wandering days. So there's too much to cover in a very brief period of time, so I'll have to skip a lot, but I want to cover some of the main details of his life. He was born on 30th September 1864, a year after Swamiji was born, in Kolkata. He was born with very spiritual samskaras, and he lived as an Orthodox Brahmin, strictly vegetarian, and observing all the Brahmin practices, repeating Gayatri and other things. He would do all those things religiously. In 1877, at the young age of 13, he met Sri Ramakrishna for the first time. He went with his friend Horinath to meet Sri Ramakrishna at Dinanath Boshu's house in Bagbaja. And on that occasion, he remembered, even though he was so young, he remembered seeing Sri Ramakrishna in the state of samadhi, which greatly impressed him. His mother, as many Indian mothers want to do, she wanted to get him married off from a young age, so she was looking into trying to arrange his marriage. He found that out, and he told her something that was so disarming that, well, I'll tell you what he said. He said, "Mother, arrange my marriage quickly and bring another mother home. She will help you in cooking and other household work." It's hard to catch what the implication here is, maybe because something is lost in translation. But the idea is that he's referring to that future wife of his as mother, and hinting to his mother that he can only look upon women as mother and not as wife. She understood that. She had that mother's intuition, and she never again pestered him about getting married. So remarkable parents too. His father was remarkable. We'll come to that in a second. But before we do, he, at the age of 12, so a year before he met Sri Ramakrishna, he met a monk at the Sarvamangala temple in Kashipur. And he was so inspired by this monk that he wanted to become a monk himself at that very young age. So he just ran off with the monk. But after some time, the monk himself said, "You're too young right now, so go back home." And of course, his parents were very happy to have him back. In May 1883, he met Sri Ramakrishna for the second time at the age of 19. And he met him in Dakshineshwar this time. And it's remarkable, his encounters with Sri Ramakrishna. I'll just mention a few things that happened. He said, this is Akhandananda himself later describing what happened. He said, "That evening, the master initiated me by writing a mantram on my tongue. He then lay down, putting his feet on my lap, and asked me to give them a little massage. I was quite strong as I practiced wrestling. No sooner had I begun to press his feet than he cried out, 'What are you doing? The legs will be crushed. Press them gently.' Immediately I realized how soft and tender the master's body was, as if his bones were covered with butter. I was embarrassed, and I asked with some fear, 'How then should I massage?' 'Pass your hands over them gently,' he replied. 'Niranjan also did like you at first,' meaning the future Niranjananandaji. Another night when Gangadhar is actually spending the night in Dakshineshwar with Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Ramakrishna would always have his disciples meditate at night. And this is another beautiful description of what happened. Gangadhar says, "Once I spent a night at Dakshineshwar with several other disciples, and the master had us all sit for meditation. While communing with our chosen deities, we often laughed and wept in ecstasy. The pure joy we experienced in those boyhood days cannot be expressed in words. Whenever I approached the master, he would invariably ask me, "Did you shed tears at the time of prayer or meditation?" And one day, when I answered yes to this, how happy he was. "Tears of repentance or sorrow flow from the corners of the eyes nearest the nose," he said, "and those of joy from the outer corners of the eyes." Suddenly, the master asked me, "Do you know how to pray?" Saying this, he flung his hands and feet about restlessly like a little child impatient for its mother. Then he cried out, "Mother dear, grant me knowledge and devotion. I don't want anything else. I can't live without you." While thus teaching us how to pray, he looked just like a small boy. Profuse tears rolled down his chest and he passed into deep samadhi. I was convinced that the master did that for my sake. One morning, Sri Ramakrishna took me to the Kali temple. Whenever I went there alone, I stood outside the threshold. But on this occasion, the master took me into the sanctum sanctorum and showed me the face of Lord Shiva, who was of course lying on his back while Kali stood over him. His face was not visible from outside the shrine, where one could only see the top of his head. The master said, "Look, here is the living Shiva." I felt that Lord Shiva was conscious and breathing. I was astonished. How potent were the master's words. Up to that time, I had thought that this image was just like all the other Shiva images I had seen. Many more such incidents, but I'll mention just one more. He goes to Dakshineshwar one day and sees that Sri Ramakrishna is in samadhi again. And when Sri Ramakrishna comes down to the normal state, he says, very profound teaching, he says, "One's own chosen deity is one's own self." Capital S self, Atman. The chosen deity and the Atman are identical. The vision of the chosen deity is equivalent to self-knowledge. We all know, or most of us are familiar with the story of Sri Ramakrishna distributing Gerua cloths to his future monastic disciples. Gangadhar was not one of those lucky 11, but Sri Ramakrishna specifically gave him an ochre cloth later, a few days later. So he also effectively initiated Gangadhar into sannyasa in an unofficial sense. I mentioned earlier that not only Gangadhar's mother, but his father was also remarkable. Shortly after Sri Ramakrishna left his body in 1886, Gangadhar felt a burning desire to become a monk, and he went to his father and told him that he would leave for the Himalayas and become a monk. And his father immediately agreed. And he in fact came to Howrah station to see his son off and said, "Go, my son, fulfill your mission in life. This world is unreal. I bless you. May you attain unflinching devotion to God." So very unusual parents. Then he starts traveling to different places in the Himalayas and other regions. He goes to Kashi, Varanasi, and he meets some great souls. He met Troilongo Swami, whom Sri Ramakrishna himself also met. He met Bhaskarananda. And Bhaskarananda was a great Sanskrit scholar, and he expressed his interest in teaching the Vedas to Gangadhar. He could tell he was a very promising, bright young monk. But Gangadhar replied, "The power of sight, which I would use for attaining knowledge by reading books, please turn it inward so that I can experience the Atman." And Bhaskaranji was very impressed and said, "I see you are a yogi." When he visits Haridwar, he meets a tantric saint named Kamraj. And Kamraj was impressed with him and asked, "What do you want?" And Akhandananda says, "I want that experience which is mentioned in the Gita. Attaining that, one grieves not and desires not." 12.17. "Oh, you want self-knowledge," said the saint. "You don't want my divine mother." The saint's passionate love for mother touched Gangadhar's heart. There are a few incidents like this which kind of move him away from looking down on divine visions as somehow lower than the self-realization. And he eventually came to realize that they're one and the same and just as great. He had an extraordinary experience when he did pilgrimage to Kedarnath. He said, "I could not look at the snow-white peak for long. My eyes became indrawn, and the huge peak of the mountain appeared before me as an eternal, uncreated symbol of Shiva. This was not imagination. It was a divine experience. Nowhere else in the entire Himalayas can you see such a resplendent form of Shiva. I mentioned that he had quite a few adventures during his travels, during his wandering days, and I'll just mention a couple. He met a number of Tibetan lamas and stayed with them in the Tuling monastery in Tibet. He traveled in Tibet, and he always kept a picture of Sri Ramakrishna with him. These monks were very impressed with the picture, and they asked, "Who is he? These eyes do not belong to an ordinary human being. This person must be a Buddha." Several people on his wanderings, they said the same thing. The moment they saw the picture, they saw something very special, even though they're not followers of our tradition. But the adventure starts while he's staying with them, he notices that these lamas lived a quite luxurious lifestyle. They liked money, food, and dress. And he was pleading for the poor. He was encouraging the lamas to somehow serve the poor in some way in the community. And they were furious, of course, and they kept him as a prisoner in the monastery and tortured him. It's not funny, it's very sad. And one lama hit him on his shoulder with a sword in its scabbard, with a sword. I mean, not with a sharp sword, but in the scabbard, but in order to injure him. And but Gangadhar kept persisting in trying to serve the poor, and they threatened to cut open his jaw and keep him in lifelong imprisonment if he persisted in speaking out for the peasants. But with the help of some friendly traders, he finally was able to escape from this monastery/prison, and he returned to Bodrinath. So that's just one of many stories. In June of 1890, after being away for 3.5 years, he came back to his brother monks in the Boranagod monastery, and he lived happily with Swami Vivekananda. A very austere life, but full of joy. And he went wandering with Swamiji, with Swami Vivekananda, later in 1890. And they stayed in Meerut for quite a while, for about 6 weeks. And so Meerut, in a sense, became a second Boranagod monastery with other brother monks as well. So it was a very special time for them. Akhandananda, while traveling again, he went to Ajmer, and he met Mr. Williams, a Christian devotee of the Master. Most of us, we know that from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, that there was a Quaker named Mishra who saw Sri Ramakrishna as Christ. But this is a less well-known Christian devotee of the Master, Mr. Williams. And Akhandanandaji wrote about him, he considered Sri Ramakrishna an incarnation of Christ. He told me about his meeting with Sri Ramakrishna. And now he's quoting Mr. Williams. "During my first visit with him, the Master spread a mat for me and another for himself. He said, 'Look here, the 2 mats are an inch apart.' '2 mats may be apart,' I said, 'but there is no distance between our hearts.'" And then Sri Ramakrishna instructed Mr. Williams in sadhana. A number of other adventures which I won't mention simply because I don't have time. But after some time wandering, very, very austere, adventurous life, then he became seized with a desire to serve humanity. And it ended up becoming the keynote of his spiritual life for the remainder of his life. So in 1895, toward the end, he comes back to Alambajar Monastery with his brother monks. And Swamiji told him, I skipped a page. So then he goes from Khetri, he went to Rajasthan, and he was there for almost 8 months. And there he saw the terrible condition of the masses there, and his heart just melted for them. And he wrote in a letter to Swamiji, asking for Swamiji's guidance about how and whether he can serve the needy there. And what Swamiji said is as follows in a letter written in 1894. Go from door to door amongst the poor and lower classes of the town of Khetri and teach them religion. Also let them have oral lessons on geography and such other subjects. No good will come of sitting idle and having princely dishes and saying Ramakrishna, O Lord, unless you can do some good to the poor. It is preferable to live on grass for the sake of doing good to others. The ochre robe is not for enjoyment. It is the banner of heroic work. The poor, the illiterate, the ignorant, the afflicted, let these be your God. Know that service to these alone is the highest religion. Know that service to these alone is the highest religion. So this gave tremendous inspiration to Swami Akhandananda to continue in his service efforts. And there are a lot of stories about how incredibly compassionate he was in serving the poor and the sick and the needy. And there are too many things to describe, but I wanted to mention one more remarkable incident, spiritual kind of experience that he had. He said when he was in Alambajar, he was suffering from malaria. And while he was sick, he had an extraordinary spiritual experience. Before that experience, he had felt that the non-dualistic experience, I am the Atman, Soham, is greater than the 5 kinds of dualistic relationships with God, being God's child or servant and so on. But while he lay ill, he had a vision. He saw the luminous form of baby Krishna in his room. And Krishna's mother, Yashoda, appeared from Akhandananda's own body. The baby was begging for food, so Yashoda began to sing and play with her little darling in order to pacify him. Sri Ramakrishna then appeared and said, "Look, what a wonderful scene." Akhandananda joyfully exclaimed, "I don't care for nirvana, Master. This is wonderful. I don't care if I am born hundreds of times in my present state of mind." Then, I should mention, this is very important, that near Sargachi, he started a permanent orphanage, which exists to this day, and it eventually became one of the most important centers in India. Of course, like Swamiji, because Swamiji started this new service-oriented kind of monastic order, he faced a lot of criticism from more traditional sadhus and Brahmins and other people. Likewise, Akhandananda got a lot of criticism. And one of the critics was Pramadadas Mitra, the great Pandit of Varanasi. Akhandananda actually wrote to him from Sargachi, asking for some financial help for the poor and needy in Sargachi. And Pramadadas Mitra gave him a nice lecture and said, it's better for a monk to travel, study, and practice meditation than to get involved in social service. And Akhandananda wrote in response to Pramadadas Mitra in 1898, he said, "I'm delighted that you have reminded me about my olden days. Those days are gone. And now a new era has sprung up. The Atman never changes, but life changes. Now I don't enjoy traveling anymore. When I first went to the Himalayas, I was a different person. Now I wonder upon seeing myself. At that time, I would avoid seeing human beings, and leaving the village, I loved to live in the secluded caves of the Himalayas, surrounded by ferocious animals. In this way, I lived for some years. Now I see God living in all human beings, and I have realized that service to man is service to God. God, as it were, is whispering in my ears, verily, these human beings are the Vedic sages. They are divine incarnations like Rama and Krishna. They are everything." Swamiji left his body in 1902, and Akhandananda was very close to him. And so he was devastated. So devastated that he actually was thinking of committing suicide out of despair. He had already realized God, so it wouldn't be sinful. But in any case, then, interesting incident, he told this to Josephine MacLeod. He said, "I have seen Swamiji after his passing away as clearly as I see you now. Otherwise, I could not live. Separation was so painful. I was going to commit suicide, but was prevented by Swamiji. He caught my hand when I was about to jump under the running tram." On 2nd May 1922, Brahmanandaji left his body. Brahmanandaji left his body on 10th April 1922, and just a few weeks later, Akhandanandaji was made vice president of the order, and Shivanandaji became the president. Then, in 1934, after Shivanandaji left his body, Akhandanandaji became the president of the Ramakrishna order. And in 1936 was Sri Ramakrishna's centenary, 100th anniversary of his birth. So Josephine MacLeod, she went to the Sargachi ashrama where Akhandanandaji was staying and said, "Give me your message for the coming centenary. You want the auspicious blessings of the president." Akhandanandaji said, "I have no message of my own, but I have received this message from the Lord. I am infinite and eternal. What is my centenary?" And then Miss MacLeod said, "Okay, all right, I shall take this message with me." But of course, the Bilumad authorities were not satisfied with this. They need an actual message from the president of the order. And the celebration is just in a couple days. So finally, Akhandanandaji relented, and he said, he explained later how he came up with this message. He said, "That message was dictated by the master. I was sleeping at night. The master spoke from my heart. Since they are asking you so much, why don't you write this message? Truly, who can observe my centenary? I am infinite and eternal. I couldn't wait for morning to write. I am an old man. Lest I forget, I picked up a pen and pad and wrote down the message." 7th February 1937, he breathed his last at the ripe age of 72. A few years before he left his body, he explained to a monk his life's philosophy. He said, "The master has still kept me alive for his work. Distribute yourself among others and bring other souls within yourself. You will see how much joy you will get from it. On the other hand, if you are always busy about yourself, you will be entangled within yourself. You will kill yourself, and you will die. The more you disseminate yourself among the people, the more you will attain bliss, and that will lead you to self-realization." Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.